So our next speaker is going to be Ranita. And Ranita, we're so glad to have you here today. Ranita is a medical doctor in physical medicine and rehabilitation and has a master's in medical biophysics. She's currently a clinical assistant professor at the University of Calgary, where she works as both a physiatrist and a biomechanics researcher. Ranita's clinical subspecialties include bracing, wheelchair seating, nerve testing, and musculoskeletal medicine. Her research interests involve in understanding how gait aids like crutches affect upper extremity motion and muscle firing patterns. She spends the remainder of her time supervising research students and medical trainees and is developing bracing and seating curriculum at her institution. For Ranita, empathy means possessing the ability to imagine how someone else might be feeling or how they might be experiencing a given situation. Ranita, I must admit, when I first read your bio, I wasn't sure if I was going to pronounce all of these words right, but we're in good company. So I'm going to pull up your presentation and please go right ahead as soon as it starts.
Perfect. You did a great job. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
All right, well, today I'm going to share my story of going from a competitive athlete who got injured, that's me on the left, to where I am now. So as Gayatri mentioned, I'm now a doctor for people with disabilities and a biomechanics researcher. And the journey here wasn't easy. When I started high school, I was actually a national level figure skater, competitive soccer player, and a varsity runner. And I went through 2 knee reconstructions and 2 years of rehabilitation while I was in high school. One of the biggest lessons I learned was how to really engage with that suffering of losing the sort of life I thought I was going to lead and allow that to open me up to new possibilities for my future. Luckily, since 8th grade, I'd been volunteering with a young man who had cerebral palsy. He was in a wheelchair that I would push, and I helped him play baseball. And even though he couldn't talk, we were still able to communicate. And we spent an amazing 9 years together. He taught me a lot about keeping my own injuries in perspective, but also planted the seed of working with people with disabilities. Because I enjoyed volunteering so much and I had more time now that I wasn't competing, I started teaching young women about science. At the same time in high school, I fell in love with physics and biomechanics and decided to pursue medical biophysics as my undergraduate degree. While I was in school, though, I realized that my real passion was actually working with people. So I actually applied to medical school. There wasn't really anyone else like me in school. Most people had done anatomy or genetics or physiology degrees. And I graduated with my MD from UBC and made a lot of great friends. But the truth is I actually almost left medicine and dropped out. I actually really hated my first year of medical school. It was a lot of memorizing facts, which was really hard for me. You didn't really think about what those facts meant, and that was the opposite of physics. And the humanist in me found it really hard that our professors would talk about our patients so coldly and distantly without really seeing them as people with stories and with real beauty. So I took a chance. I'd read about this doctor in a magazine who was a neurologist but used to be an engineer, and I just cold emailed him, and surprisingly, he actually agreed to meet with this random person. He gave me this amazing advice of trusting your own wisdom. I'm not sure if the slides have stopped, but I will wait patiently. Right, so this is Dr. McKeon. He gave me this amazing advice, do you mind going back one more, of trusting your own wisdom and really not taking the advice of other people because you know yourself best. He also gave me the gift of talking to me about a field that I might enjoy called physiatry or physical medicine and rehabilitation. So I took yet another chance, and after my first year of medical school, I shadowed a few physiatrists like Dr. Miller up here on the left. And I just remember the first time I, worked with a patient with an amputation or a spinal cord injury, I just kind of knew in my heart that this was the field for me. I wanted to be a doctor for people with disabilities. So I went back to medical school with this deeper understanding of why memorizing facts like where this nerve was could help me help my patients, and then decided to do another 5 years of specialist training in physiatry or rehab medicine. but I started getting frustrated that unlike cardiology or other areas of medicine, there wasn't a lot of evidence in treating our patients with disabilities. So I re-engaged with my love for physics and went back and did a master's of medical biophysics for another 2 years, studying how things like braces affected elbow biomechanics. By then, though, I'd been in school for about 13 years after high school, so I was kind of done. And after a lot of negotiations and interviews across Canada, I was able to get a job doing exactly what I wanted here in Calgary. My specialty is working with patients that need braces and wheelchairs like Gayatri mentioned, and I really love my career, but again, it wasn't easy to get here. So I want to highlight a few key lessons that I've learned and had to relearn a few times along the way. So here with the arrow is Joe Higgins, who used to coach me when I played wheelchair basketball. One day we were at regional training camp and I scored a basket and just kept playing like it was no big deal because there was lots of other Paralympians on the court, and Joe pulled me off right away and told me that I had to celebrate my baskets. Otherwise he was going to bench me. I was really angry about it at the time, but that lesson to really celebrate those small victories, especially if you're on a long personal or professional journey, is really important just to keep you motivated and focused. After med school, I was also part of the Rick Hansen 25th anniversary relay, which was pretty special. We're all surrounded by really inspirational people, and that could be people as big as Rick Hansen to people like my neighbor. And I think it's really important to keep those inspiring people around you as fuel. So I keep this picture of me and Rick from on the right side in my office to remind me that when times are tough, this is why I do what I do. But we all have the chance to inspire other people, and I couldn't have gotten here without the help of others. And now that I'm in this privileged position, I really try to create opportunities for other people in research and medicine so that we can all kind of leave the world in a better place. I've also had to learn how to prioritize my own physical, emotional, and spiritual needs because no one else is going to do that for you. We seem to have run into technical difficulties. Yes, this is a great picture from the zoo while we still have pandas. So in medical training, it's really common to not have enough time to eat or go to the bathroom, but you really need to prioritize things like this amazing panda. You need to make that time to eat and to rest and to just let your mind wander in order to maintain who you are as a human. It's also important though to take risks. So I was asked to rappel down this 13-story building to raise funds for equipment for kids with disabilities, and I am terrified of heights. It was probably the most crazy thing I've ever done, but being able to do it and that feeling of achievement empowered me to take other risks for big gains. And finally, I'm really blessed to see this in my daily work in rehab, but life is precious. At the end of the day, your career won't matter as much as your relationships. And my family and friends have really supported me throughout my journey, and it's important for me to always prioritize them in return. I mean, you're always going to be able to find another job, right? But at the end of the day, my biggest secret to success, if you want to call it that, is perseverance. So this is a throwback of me in high school. And even though I don't run anymore, those lessons about sticking to your vision, even when other people don't share it or when you encounter inevitable obstacles, are really important. So sometimes I look back and I'm shocked at how far I've come from that young woman who thought she would never get over the pain of so many surgeries and injuries. But I think we all have the choice to look at our own circumstances honestly and create personal and professional meaning from our own suffering. So that's a brief peek at my journey. Thanks.
Ranita, thank you so much. What an incredibly inspiring story. I'd like to read to you some of the comments that just came in. And the words are resilient, insightful, inspiring, and amazing, and the importance of celebrating small victories. A question that the audience has asked you is, what would you suggest to do when you're faced with a seemingly overwhelming challenge?
I mean, that's the story of my life. You know, I think it's important to, like was said by Debbie, like always just be making regular practice in your life of reflection so that you're prepared when those obstacles occur. So for me, I'm of the Sikh faith, and daily meditation is really important for me to gradually build that resilience over time. I think you also have to expect that challenges are going to happen. So a big learning for me was that frustration is proportional to expectations. So if you go into something expecting that it's going to be easy or a breeze, you're that much more frustrated when you encounter obstacles. And then, yeah, if you're faced with something that's super overwhelming, I always try to break things down into those smaller goals. Like, as you saw, it took me 13 years after high school to get to the kind of job that I have. That wasn't something that happened overnight, but it was kind of like, okay, focus on this one test, or focus on this next job interview, and just try the best you can. But, you know, I've had lots of failures, lots of rejections. That's just part of the journey too.
Wow. 13 years of education after high school, did you say?
Mm-hmm.
That is amazing. That's yeah, I believe it. I don't think it's easy to become a doctor, and for what you've accomplished and turning your own suffering into a service for others, I think is such a role model of empathy. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.